Hi everyone, my name is Imran, and today I am going to give you a very quick idea of how our vulnerability management solution can help you to modernize your pen testing process. In the last couple of videos, we discussed how Snapsec suite is used for different use cases by our clients. Some of the clients they use it for centralization of vulnerability reports, and some of the companies they use it for running open source tools within their CI/CD pipeline. And in this video, I'm going to give you a very quick idea of how this can contribute to your existing pen testing process. Talking a little bit about the traditional way of pen testing, which involves static PDF files, we believe that they actually bring a lot of management chaos into the process. Having a PDF file and then pushing that file to different teams and asking them for updates and which of the vulnerabilities are fixed, which ones aren't fixed, and then involving the security vendor for retesting process. I think it becomes really unmanaged and becomes very complex from the management point of view. And that's why eventually those reports, there is always lack of clarity in terms of what was fixed, what wasn't fixed, and there is lack of clarity on other aspects of management. For example, whose responsibility was it to fix those vulnerabilities, and who breached the SLA, and there is lack of tracking and reprioritization and all sort of those things. With Snapsec Suite, we actually help companies to bring a proper management process around their pen testing processes. The way it happens is we have something called, and these assessments are basically projects. If you're going to do a new pen test within your organization, you will have to create a new assessment for that. And once you create this new assessment, what happens is you basically involve your teams onto the portal as well. If your organization have multiple teams, Android team, iOS team, and then you have a pen test vendor, you can create 3 different teams and involve those members into the specified teams. And once the pen test starts, you will have to share this particular what we call reporting URI with the pen testing vendor. This URI will allow the pen testing team to report all the vulnerabilities into that pen test, found through that pen test, into this specific portal. Once the pen test team, they report the vulnerabilities, they fill the CVSS form, they also attach the affected asset and all sort of those things, and then they report these vulnerabilities to this portal. You as a company will see this particular dashboard for that particular assessment. So you can see how many vulnerabilities have been reported, how many of them are into different stages, how many of them are low, how many of them are high, and do all sort of those things. And you can also kind of look for the whole list of vulnerabilities that have been reported through that particular pen test. And the interesting thing now you can do from here is basically the management of these vulnerabilities. You can assign owners. This particular vulnerability, it belongs to the iOS team. You can either assign them to different teams within your organization, or you can assign them to different members inside those teams. You can also update the status. And in fact, the owners, once they start working on these vulnerabilities, they can update the status as well. You can also move them from one assessment to another assessment. If there is an assessment for web applications, there is an assessment for infrastructure, and you believe this vulnerability doesn't belong here, you can push it to the infrastructure team. You can also attach vulnerabilities to the specific assets. And you have some other functionalities where you are able to generate reports publicly. One of the interesting things you can also do here is you can reprioritize the vulnerabilities. If a company, a security vendor, he reported this vulnerabilities as low or medium or critical, and you believe, no, this should not be critical because this doesn't really have that much of a security impact. So you can say the confidentiality is not really impacted so much. Update the CVS scoring of vulnerabilities as well. In fact, if there is any modification needed in the reports, you can add new details to the reports as well. And one last thing that allows your companies to have better management of this fewer vulnerabilities, you have a conversation feature as well. Your team members can talk to each other, in fact, talk to vendors as well. Once you have these capabilities of management capabilities of all the vulnerabilities, you can segregate vulnerabilities. You can see how many of vulnerabilities are in retest stage and how many of them are still pending. And when was the last activity done? Who's responsible for owning these vulnerabilities? And you can also create a cycle of your vulnerability management process. A single vulnerability can go from interview state, then once the team is ready to fix it, you can move it to in progress state. Once the team pushes the fix, they can change it to the retest state, where a security vendor will be responsible for taking the vulnerabilities from the retest state and then test them, either resolve them or unresolve them. They can either say this vulnerability is fixed, so we are marking this as resolved, or they can say this vulnerability is not fixed, so they can push it back to interview or unresolved state. You can also collection of evidences. Tomorrow, if a vendor says this vulnerability is resolved, they will have to explain how was this vulnerability revalidated, who revalidated the vulnerability, and they will have to attach the evidences, a screenshot or something which proves that this vulnerability was indeed found to be resolved from the pen testing side, from the vendor side. As you can see, that this vulnerability portal not only allows you to have better management, but also segregate responsibilities and collect proper evidences throughout the process. One of the things we allow you to do here is, if your company is doing multiple security assessments, one of the things you can do is you can create a lot of assessments, and as you're progressing those assessments, you can see the progress report here and how many vulnerabilities have you resolved in each security assessment. And then this page actually allows you to see all the vulnerability reports at single screen. You can also see, if you want to see only vulnerabilities reported in the quarter one assessment, so you can see all the vulnerabilities. I want to see vulnerabilities that are criticals in the quarter one. There are no vulnerabilities that are critical. Any vulnerabilities that are owned by Fazan 221, no vulnerabilities. No vulnerabilities owned by these people. You want to see all the vulnerabilities that have been resolved in Q pentest. So you can do all sort of these filters and all sort of those things. So one of the other things that this portal allows you to do is actually see vulnerabilities from the asset point of view as well, because when a vendor reports these vulnerabilities to your portal, to this portal, we also kind of enforce them to attach those vulnerabilities to the specific asset. So they have, once they write the report, they have to kind of select the asset where this vulnerability was found. So you can see that each vulnerability has a specific asset, that this vulnerability was found on this particular asset. So as I said, if your company fixes vulnerabilities and has ownership, and responsibilities from the asset point of view. For example, this asset belongs to this particular person, so that that team can kind of log into the portal, go to the asset section, and see how many vulnerabilities does his assets have. So, for example, this asset trust.bugcrowd.com has 2 critical and 1 low vulnerabilities, and it has total number of 5 vulnerabilities, and 40% of the vulnerabilities have been resolved. So he can kind of click on this particular asset, and then it's going to list all the vulnerabilities, related to that particular asset. One of the other things we also help companies to do here is basically the change management. So if your company is let's say releasing new features and updates to the portal or to your business applications, and you want VAPT to be integrated within your releases or change management, we help companies to kind of create those changes here and push the information to the pen testing team, and pen testing team can kind of see the information, what kind of changes and where pushed, and then perform the PT, see if there are any vulnerabilities and push those vulnerabilities to specific change, and then let the team fix those vulnerabilities before pushing the change. So there is a whole management of change management process into this portal. One of the other things that we allow you to do is generate basically the PDF reports. For example, this report, if we can open this particular report, you can see it allows you to generate full PDF reports for compliance purpose, even though we don't really encourage or endorse the PDF reports for pen testing, vulnerability fixing and all sort of those things, but we allow you to generate these vulnerability reports that can be used for compliance and other purposes. In fact, for the executives, we also generate kind of executive level reports as well. So if you need to generate a report where you can you need full statistics of what's happening within your organization, you can generate those reports as well. The last thing that we have is we also have integration with Jira and Qualys and Google Sheet and other open source tools. So if you want to either bring vulnerabilities from these tools to this portal or push vulnerabilities from this portal to your management tools like Jira, Slack, and all those things, we have vulnerabilities for that as well. So the quick idea here in this video was to give you a very quick idea of what can be done from the pen testing point of view. So we allow you to kind of integrate your whole pen testing process with this, then track the remediation and do all sort of the management activities on your pen testing reports for better tracking and better results around your pen testing process. I hope this gives you some idea in terms of how we can, how this tool can kind of contribute to your pen testing process. Thank you so much and see you in the next video.